Hey, what's going on? You're now tuned into the PVD Horror Podcast. I'm Brandon and I'm joined with my co-host Dave. And today we have filmmaker, author, and film critic Chris Stuckmann to talk about his new film, Shelby Oaks, which is set to release in theaters on October 24th. Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm looking at your background, Brandon, and you've got the Lost Boys, you got Ghostface, you got Jason, you got Freddy, you got all this amazing stuff. I'm looking at Dave's background, and he's got pandas.
Yes. I'm at work. I wish I was at my home. I have a much better background there, but the pandas
Oh,
will
it's great. I love it. I love it.
That's awesome. So Chris, I was able to check out Shelby Oaks at Fantastic Fest. It was such a cool way to experience the film. You had shared that Fantastic Fest was the birthplace for this project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. In 2019, I decided my wife and I had been brainstorming Shelby for a few years at that point, and we were very, very, very tired of not making movies. I was very depressed. I was feeling low. I needed that creative, those creative juices, to get out there and make something, and it just wasn't happening. And I decided, I had heard a lot of filmmakers like Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez talk about how they got some of their lower budget stuff made and the routes that they were taking with like utilizing locations they knew they could get into and things like that. And that was the goal with Shelby. And I decided, the best place to meet other people who are making stuff that you kind of want to make in that ballpark is to go to film festivals, genre film festivals. You're going to meet genre filmmakers. And so I went to Fantastic Fest because I had heard it was one of the best. And this is, like I said, this was fall of 2019. And what I discovered upon arriving is that the people who go there are all wearing badges that identify their positions. You got fan, you've got producer, director, you've got filmmaker, you've got industry. And I'm like, wow, this is so helpful. Everyone's literally wearing a sign that says what they are and what they do. And it allowed me to kind of get into, conversations with people about movies that I had seen, but also networking and meeting people that could hopefully help me make something one day, which is how I ended up bumping into Aaron B. Kuntz from Paper Street Pictures. And yeah, I was introduced to him by my friend Josh Lobo. He's a filmmaker. And we just talked about movies that we had seen at the fest because I didn't want to look like I was trying to sell myself,
Yeah.
or try to look like I was looking for a handout or something. And we talked about movies for like a good 20 minutes before he asked me what I was working on. And then suddenly he opened that door and I just jumped in. I was like, oh, I got this thing. And I pitched Shelby Oaks right there, cold, right to him. And he was like, I'm listening. I'd like to hear some more. And he gave me his email and yeah, the movie got made and we were able to show it at Fantastic Fest, which is crazy. It was a full circle moment.
you know, um, I love that you took like a mix subgenre approach here. I don't know how much of that you are willing to share before people check out the film, but I was really like struggling to think of other examples of films that stuck out to me that have taken this approach. Like, I was curious what some of the influences were making this, and also how did you pitch it to Aaron, if you don't mind sharing that?
The two biggest influences have always been Lake Mungo and Noroi, the Japanese horror film. Both of them are mockumentaries. Both of them use mixed media to tell their stories, and both of them scared the shit out of me. And so I wanted to try to approach this movie from that perspective of mixed media. It does have found footage elements. It has mockumentary elements, and of course, traditional narrative elements. And so to answer your other question, how did I pitch it? I almost laughed when you asked because it was a tough pitch. It was tough to say like, well, it's going to start like this and then it's going to become this and trust me, you'll get it. But the benefit was that I could say, because you always have to try to find, when you pitch movies, you have to find like a really um, marketable way to say everything,
Mm.
especially with like weird ideas. You got to get people to like agree and see what's in your head, but also from like a kind of trailery kind of way of like, it'll look like this and you have to make it sound cool. And so I was able to lean into the fact that and say like, hey, there's like a 15-minute portion of this movie that we can shoot pretty cheaply. And I
Mm.
into that and be like, we could save a little more money there. and then spend some money on some of these other things. And as soon as I found, like, that's how you talk to a producer also, is because they're very concerned about money and where that money's going to go on the movie. And Aaron always says this about Paper Street, is they always want to put their dollars on the screen. They don't want to like
Mhm.
fill people's pockets that don't need money, that are just like not contributing anything to the film. They want to put the dollars on the screen. And so when I was able to say, like, look, we've got this portion of the movie that plays like this, and I could speak to Aaron in the language of cinema because he loves movies like Lake Mungo, I could say it's, in the ballpark of a Lake Mungo kind of feeling. And then have this other thing that also comes from there. And the pitch basically was like, hey, we live in a world that's mixed media. We get all of our stories from so many different formats. We don't just watch only the news. We don't read only the newspaper. We watch YouTube. We watch TikTok. There's social media. There's books, movies, audiobooks, podcasts. It's an endless array of things that we're getting stories from every single day. So why can't we make a movie that also tells a linear story but from different formats?
Yeah, I love it.
Nice. Now, before I got into podcasting and doing interviews and giving my thoughts on films, I would watch your reviews on YouTube. I did not often have someone to talk to about films, but I always found myself agreeing with the way that you viewed a project. How did you experience reviewing films, influence your directing and writing process on this project?
Thank you, man. That's really nice of you to say.
Mm.
First off, I think that it's impossible. Like, if you immerse yourself in anything, in any type of whatever it is, if you just immerse yourself in the world of cooking, you're going to be a good chef. You're going to make good food if you care that much and you're passionate about cooking. You're going to make good meals, and it's also going to make you appreciate food more if you
Yeah.
become a great
Yeah.
chef. You know,
Yeah.
and so, like, with me with movies, I've spent my whole life immersed in them. Movies, I've said this a million times, but movies are my religion. The theater is my church. And so if you immerse yourself in movies, it's going to make you appreciate making them more. And if you make one, like I did, it has made me appreciate movies more so much because
Mhm.
it's like I can approach them from a perspective of a fan, but I can also think like, oh my God, how did they pull that off? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I want to know, like, how did you do that in 20 days or whatever? Like, how'd you do that amazing scene? And so, yeah, man, I think that, like, just being so immersed in film for the past, since I was 14, but since starting the YouTube channel, like seeing 3 movies a week and sometimes more, you
Mhm.
can't help but learn something after
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
Something sticks. I think about the horror genre and I think about how like horror movies are way more than just like jump scares. They're psychological, they can be visceral. There's some, the special effects piece of them. I was just curious, like, what's the elements of horror that intrigue you the most? And you try to like show it, demonstrate in your film.
I think the things that excite me the most tend to be stillness, watching characters think and sort of be still in a moment can be quite frightening. But also the edit and the sound. I think that when you get into sound design of this movie and the edit, of course, we really did take a lot of time with that sound design to try to present an auditory experience that was unique, that felt like, here's kind of where you think you might have a jump, but we're going to not have a jump. We're going to have it be silent, and we're just going to show you the thing. And then you can be like, you can gasp if you want, you can react, you can have an emotional experience with this, but we're not going to force you to have that experience by hammering you over the head with sound design. And I wanted to kind of craft a movie that felt creepy, that got under your skin. And I feel like if you pummel people with the sound design and with the score, you're not going to get that, because then you feel like you're being assaulted by it all. And you needed to have like,
Yeah.
I needed to have like a feeling that felt like it was, you were on sort of the roller coaster of the sound with it. So I think it's like a combination of like stillness, not being afraid to be silent for long periods of time. I think there's like a 7 or 8 minute chunk of this movie without dialogue. And so I wanted to, play in that realm a little bit. And you get a lot of that from old silent movies where
Yeah.
you could really just read emotions on people's faces, and you got it all from the actor.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, we are in a time where a lot of movie theaters are starting to shut down, and we recently lost a few on our end. You posted on your Instagram that your main theater growing up as a child just shut down. Although you weren't able to watch your film there, you were able to see the trailer. Can you tell us just how much that meant to you?
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, Regal Independence 10, rest in peace. It was strange because I would go there every once in a while over the past few years, and they had never renovated. It was still the same like cloth seats, no recliners,
Mhm.
every seat squeaked, stains everywhere. And I kept thinking to myself, like, I can't believe this place is still here. Because it just felt like it was always on the cusp of closing. And every time I would go there, it'd be like me and one other person, or
Okay.
sometimes me and nobody. And and I'll admit, like I started going to a lot of the nicer theaters because they just weren't keeping it up. But I went there specifically to see Together, which was the first movie released that had my trailer. Because it just like my whole movie ticket scrapbook is just filled with ticket stubs from that theater. And to be in that place and see a trailer for my movie, um, yeah, man. I mean, I definitely cried. It was very emotional. I was kind of like very, yeah, it was a lot to take in, and it was sad to see it close, and it was also closed very abruptly. Like they literally made a Facebook post, and they were like, "Hey, tomorrow's showtimes are our last showtimes." That was it. It was just we're done. I think Demon Slayer was one of the last things they showed.
Oh man.
Probably the last showtime was Demon Slayer. And I went there with my kids the very next day just to kind of like show them like, hey, this is where daddy, used to go all the time. My kids are four. I have 4-year-old twins. And
Okay.
to kind of like show them like this is where daddy used to go when he was a kid. And we took some photos of, what it looked like. And that's where I made that Instagram post because yeah, man. I mean, it's a strange feeling when a place that is housed with so many great memories suddenly just goes away and it's just kind of sitting there. And that's honestly, that's where some of
Yeah.
the horror in Shelby Oaks comes from is this ghost town. Like there's an amusement park and stuff where it's like at one point in time, a lot of really happy memories happened here, and now it's just filled with rot. And I
Mhm.
always find that very creepy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris, you're a super busy man, and I know your time with us is coming to a close, but thank you so much for hopping on here and sharing Shelby Oaks with us and chatting about it. We're really super excited for people to check this out.
Thank you, man. Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
So everybody make sure you check out Shelby Oaks in theaters October 24th. And yeah, just keep an eye on Chris and everything he's got coming forward because Shelby Oaks, I think, is going to get people excited about future projects. So make sure you check it out. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
It takes a lot of love for a person to do this.